welcome back. In this episode we're going to see if we can fire up this 350 that's been sitting for years. So I got this 350 and turbo 350 from a buddy. He's had it for about 5 years, and we figure it probably hasn't been run in 7 or 8 years. I helped him pick it up all those years ago, and he's had it sitting in his yard undercover, but with the manifolds off. So the first thing I did was take a camera and look inside all the cylinders, and they all look pretty good. I then put oil in the cylinders and then rotated the engine by hand to make sure everything's free, and that seemed okay. And then I continued to just take everything off the engine that didn't need to be there. Fan and belts and all that sort of stuff. Because to fire it up on the floor, you don't need any of that. I want to fire it up, make sure that it can run and runs okay, no terrible noises. And then I'll probably get it ready to store it, because I'm going to use it in a project in the future, and that won't be for a little while. So here we go. Couple things to add before we get going. I took the transmission off because one, it's too big to store with the transmission connected, and then two, if I fire it up on the floor, the transcooler lines aren't hooked up to anything and it'll just puke fluid all over my floor. And then the other day I put my remote starter on it and made sure the starter and everything worked, and it had this oil line on it. It's for a mechanical oil pressure gauge. So I took it out and then installed a plug there so I don't puke oil everywhere. And it has oil pressure because I got oil on the floor. And then another thing is, the manifolds were off, so I kind of just put them on with a couple bolts. I don't have gaskets or anything, but I noticed, I don't know if you can see in there, but the bolt holes don't line up anymore. And I was like, well, that's weird. So quick Google search, and apparently that's a thing. They actually make a tool. It's called an exhaust manifold stretcher. So whatever, it doesn't matter. We'd only have them on there just to kind of direct the exhaust out of the shop, because it's probably going to smoke pretty good because I put quite a bit of oil in the cylinders. So we've got a jumper wire hooked up to the ignition for the HEI. And we got a battery over here. So if we hit this, cranks pretty good. So here I have some 2-cycle mixed gas. So let's see if we can get some in the bowl. I don't know what the inside of this carburetor looks like. It could be gross. If I can get it running long enough, I'll probably dump some oil down it while it's running and kind of just fog the whole top end. You can buy fogging oil and whatever in the stores, but you can just use transmission fluid or whatever, anything oily. You want to coat everything with oil. That would be ideal. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. Just put it everywhere. Alright. And then we hook up ground, power. Here we go. Ooh. See how it's leaking out the exhaust manifolds? There's only a couple bolts holding them in. Okay, hold on. I'll put you on a stand so I can use 2 hands. Okay, let's try that again. Should have had you on the other side so you could see the fire. See if it happens again. Well, that was pretty easy. Okay, we'll try one more time. I filled the bowl again. While it's running, I'm going to try to get some of this transmission fluid down through it. That's a lot of fire. Okay, that's probably as good as we're gonna get before I burn the fucking shop down, or, you know. Okay, it's smoky enough. I think that's the best we're gonna get. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. It seemed to fire up pretty flawlessly. So this drivetrain came out of like a 73, 74 square body pickup, and it was a running and driving truck. The reason why the previous owner ripped it all out was because the truck was so rotten that it was probably the only good bit left. So I'm going to use it for a project in the future, but until then I need to store it. And I just have this little shop, and it's already pretty full. So you have to get creative on how you're going to store things. So what I've done is I've got these two bins. One is like a water tote, and I got it for free because it had a hole in it, and I made this little roof. You just cut a hole in it, and I can use the forklift and put an engine in there. And then this one here, it's some sort of agricultural container that someone cut a hole in it and made it into like a doghouse or something. But I boarded it up, and I'll probably put transmissions or whatever in here. So it's got holes in the bottom. I think I might add some vents to it, because what I've found through the years is you do not want an engine not to breathe. If you wrap it up in a tarp or plastic or whatever, it's just gonna get moisture in there, it's gonna sweat, and then it's gonna rust. So maybe if you lived in Arizona or something, that would be fine, but I live in a rainforest, so that is not the case. So another way that I've stored engines quite a bit is just leave them in the car. The engine was designed to be in the car. The hood in front of the car protects it, so that seems to work pretty good. But in this case, I don't have a car to leave it in, so I've used that box before and it worked perfect. I've drilled holes in the bottom to let any water out or whatever, and then that roof thing, there's a big gap basically the whole way around, so if any moisture does get in there, evaporation will get rid of it. So yeah, that's the plan. So, but before we do that, I'm going to re-oil the cylinders and do a couple little other things to kind of better my odds for storing it. Chances are it's not going to be stored for too long, maybe a year, maybe 2. I'll just have to see how far I get, and I got to do other projects first. So this thing was obviously stored in very much worse conditions than I'm going to give it for the past 8 years, so I imagine I'll be just fine. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these exhaust tubes off just because they stick out so much. I don't think they'll even fit with them on there. Yeah, let's get to doing that. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip this manifold off. I'm just going to spray in the holes with fluid film. Next I'm going to go back through and re-oil all the holes. So this is mostly 1540 with a little bit of ATF that was left in the bottom. I figure too much oil cannot hurt. So now I'm just doing the same thing to the other side. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can see, but these plugs look nice and oily. So between the mixed fuel and the ATF and the initial oiling of the cylinders, I think we got a good coating of oil everywhere inside. And then this oil we're adding now is just an extra layer of protection. So that's about it. I got pretty much that whole bottle of oil in those cylinders. I just put a rag over the carburetor, put a zip tie around it just to keep the big chunks out, and I just tucked a couple rags in the end of the manifolds just to keep any rodents or anything that wants to get up in there out of there. Like I said before, I've had the best success with letting an engine breathe. If you wrap it up too tight with plastic, it'll just sweat, and then you'll end up with rust in your cylinders or rusty valves, and this is what I've done and had the most success with. So that's it. Engine's all tucked away. In this box we have transmissions. So using the forklift makes this really easy. If you had to, you could use an engine crane. I think it would just be a little bit more work. So by putting oil in those cylinders, we're trying to accomplish two things. One is put a coating of oil on the cylinder wall itself, and then over time as it sits, the oil will leak down and get in behind the ring and everywhere inside of there to keep the ring from seizing to the wall. Now, if I were just going to put this in a project and fire it up, I would re-oil the cylinders and spin it over with the plugs out, then put the plugs back in, and then I would go to fire it up. In my case, this engine's probably going to get a refresh, so I'm not too concerned about that. So there you go. That's basically the gist of how I store an engine. Get it nice and oily, fill those cylinders up, and then tuck it away, keep it dry, but let it breathe. Let me know in the comments if you guys have your own ways of storing an engine. I'm always open to learning something new. So that's going to be it for this one. Now I just got to clean up my mess and get ready for the next thing. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.